Mira carried the last box up the creaky stairs. The apartment building was old, very old. Paint peeled from the walls like sunburnt skin. The air smelled dusty and sweet, like forgotten memories. But the rent was cheap. So cheap, Mira couldn't say no. Her new apartment, number 13, was at the very end of a long, dark hallway. It was small, but it was hers. She smiled as she dropped the box onto the floor. It was a new start, a new life. Finally, a place to call her own. She began to unpack, humming a happy tune that echoed strangely in the empty space. Her landlord, Mr. Blackwood, was a pale man. His eyes were like two dark holes in a sheet of paper. He never smiled, not once. He handed Mira a single rusty key. "This opens your apartment," he said. His voice was a low whisper like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Then he pointed a long bony finger down the hall. "There is one rule in this building," he warned. "The last door on the left, the one at the very end of the hall, it stays locked. Always. You must never ever try to open it." He stared at her, his expression serious and cold. Mira nodded, a little creeped out. "Okay," she promised, "I won't." It was a weird rule, but she wasn't going to argue. She just wanted to settle in. She spent the rest of the day unpacking her clothes and books. She put up pictures of her family and friends. She tried to make the old apartment feel like home. As the sun went down, long shadows stretched across the floorboards. The building grew quiet, too quiet. Mira locked her front door and made herself a cup of tea, trying to ignore the nervous feeling growing in her stomach. She looked down the hall before going to bed. The forbidden door was just a dark rectangle in the gloom. It looked like any other door, but Mr. Blackwood's warning echoed in her head. Why was it so important? What was behind it? She shook her head, telling herself she was being silly. It was probably just a storage closet, full of old mops and dusty junk, nothing to be scared of. She went to bed, pulling the covers up to her chin, and tried to think of happy things. But sleep did not come easily that first night. The first time she heard it, Mira thought she was dreaming. It was a soft sound, a faint whisper. It seemed to come from far away. She sat up in bed, listening. The sound was gone. Maybe it was just the old building settling, or the wind. She lay back down and closed her eyes. Then she heard it again, a soft tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the hallway. It was coming from the direction of the forbidden room. Her heart started to beat faster. She told herself it was nothing, just her imagination playing tricks on her in a new, strange place. The next night, the sounds were louder. The whispers were clearer, but she couldn't understand the words. They sounded like secrets being told in the dark. The tapping became a steady knocking. Knock, knock, knock. It was a lonely, desperate sound. Every night it was the same, whispers and knocks. Mira started to feel like she wasn't alone. During the day, everything was normal. The sun would shine and the sounds would stop. But as soon as night fell, the haunting noises would begin again, a nightly ritual she couldn't escape. Mira started seeing things, or at least she thought she did. Out of the corner of her eye, she would see a shadow move. When she turned to look, there was nothing there. One night, she saw something darker than the surrounding darkness slide under the forbidden door. It looked like a thin black snake, but it was made of smoke. It slithered into her apartment and vanished. She tried to call her friend, but her phone was dead. The screen was black. She tried the light switch. The lights flickered on and off, then died completely, plunging her into total darkness. The fourth night was the worst. The knocking was loud. Boom, boom, boom! It sounded like someone was angry, like someone was trying to break down the door. The whispers turned into a low groaning sound, a sound of pain. Mira huddled on her couch, a blanket wrapped tightly around her. She was too scared to sleep. She was too scared to even move. The noises went on for hours. Why wouldn't they stop? What did they want? She felt a cold dread creep over her. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that something terrible was happening in that room. One night, everything was silent. There was no knocking, no whispering. The silence was almost scarier than the noise. After hours of waiting, Mira couldn't take it anymore. She had to know what was happening. She lit a candle, its small flame pushing back the thick darkness. Her hand trembled, making the shadows on the wall dance and leap. She crept out of her apartment and tiptoed down the hall. As she got closer, she saw it. The forbidden door was ajar, just a crack, a sliver of blackness in the candlelight. Her heart pounded in her chest. Mr. Blackwood's warning screamed in her mind. Never open it! But she had to. The silence was a question she needed to answer. Pushing the door gently, she stepped inside. The air was freezing cold and it smelled of damp earth and decay. The room was empty, no furniture, no windows, just 4 bare walls. Her candle flame flickered wildly, casting strange shapes all around her. The walls were not bare, they were covered in drawings. They were crude, like a small child had drawn them with charcoal, pictures of stick figures with sad faces. She held the candle closer to the wall. The drawings were disturbing. One showed a dark, shadowy figure standing behind a little girl. Another showed a house with black smoke coming out of the windows. Underneath it, a single word was written, "Help." Mira felt a tear roll down her cheek. What had happened here? On the far wall, in big, messy letters, was a chilling message. It said, "She lives inside." A cold shiver ran down Mira's spine. Who was she? Was she the one making the noises every night? Suddenly, Mira saw a flicker of movement. There was a large, cracked mirror leaning against one wall. In the reflection, she saw the candle. She saw her own terrified face, and she saw something else. A tall, dark shadow was standing right behind her. It had no face, no eyes, just a shape of pure blackness. Before she could scream, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The candle blew out. She was trapped in complete and utter darkness. The room was no longer empty. Voices whispered all around her from every direction, "You're one of us now." Black smoke swirled around Mira's feet. It was cold and thick like icy water. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of ghostly voices filling the small room. "You shouldn't have opened the door!" they hissed. Quick, terrible images flashed before Mira's eyes. She saw other people, other tenants from long ago. A young man with fear in his eyes, a woman crying. She saw them all standing in this very room, just as she was. She saw the shadow figure pull them into the mirror, their screams swallowed by the darkness. She felt a terrible coldness seep into her body. It was not just in the room, it was inside her. Something was entering her, possessing her. It felt like being filled with ice and shadows. Her thoughts were no longer her own. Her fear was replaced by a hollow emptiness. The last thing she remembered was her own reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were wide and scared. Then, the shadow behind her moved. It flowed into her reflection, and her image in the mirror changed. The fear was gone. Her eyes became dark, empty pools. She was no longer Mira. She was just another part of the room's terrible collection. The whispers finally stopped. The next morning, the sun shone brightly. The hallway was quiet and still. Mr. Blackwood stood outside apartment 13, a new tenant beside him. The young man was smiling, excited to move in. "It's a great price," the young man said. Mr. Blackwood did not smile. He handed over the same rusty key. "There is just one rule," the landlord said, his voice the same dry whisper. He pointed his long, bony finger down the hall. "The last door on the left. You must never open it. Do you understand?" The new tenant nodded, promising to obey. Inside the forbidden room, it was pitch black. A figure stood silently in the corner, unmoving. Her eyes were empty, staring at nothing. It was Mira. She was waiting for the whispers to start again. Waiting for the next person who would be too curious. Waiting for the next person to make the same mistake she did. Because some doors are locked for a reason. Some rooms are meant to stay closed forever, and some warnings should always be listened to. Some rooms should never be opened.